Hi everybody, mic is on. Excellent. Clicker is here. Excellent. So this was a really good tee-up from the previous speaker. So some of the things that he mentioned that we in the ad monetization business don't publish, we actually do publish. I gave a great talk last year about really creative ways to optimize your ad monetization by how you're working with the games. I'm not going to be talking too much about that today. I wanted to change things up a little bit. So today I'm going to have a little bit more of a holistic view on how you can grow your app economy. There's going to be a focus on monetization, and there's going to be a focus on user acquisition, because these are two things that are really interconnected, right? They're very much two sides of the same coin, and we really want to try and hammer that into people to get that understanding that, you know, you can grow your economy in many ways. And people tend to just stare too blind at one. Sorry? The other one? Yes. Cool. Yes. So let's talk first a little bit about monetization, because that is a really big part of how you can optimize your app economy. And just like I said now here in the intro, right, I'm repeating myself a little bit, but a lot of the talks, I've been to many of these conferences over many of years. I've been in the industry in general now for over 10 years. There's always a very strong focus on the user acquisition cost of it, because it's a very definable number. It's an invoice that you have to pay at the end of the month, so it's very easy to get very focused on that one. And very often we get questions. Everyone's saying, hey, CPIs are too high, CPIs are too high, CPIs are too high. Well, not to sound like an asshole, right? But they aren't. Like, CPIs are at the right level. It's not this is sort of the app install business is not a perfect market, but it's fairly close to it. There's supply, there's demand. Anyone who took a basic course in economics know that those meet roughly somewhere, and that's the CPI you're paying. So it's really not too high. It is the right CPI for the market. It may be too high to you, which is quite common and really frustrating. But the general sort of, maybe one of the general themes of this talk is that, well, there really isn't that much you can do to optimize your CPI. There are no magic wands you can wave to cut them in half, at least not if you want to have sustainable, scalable growth. So the key thing to focus in is actually on your lifetime value, because the more money you earn, the higher CPIs you can afford. The companies that are spending $1 million a day are not doing it because they're incredibly good at user acquisition and that they manage to get the lowest CPIs. They can do it because they have the highest earnings, the highest conversion into paying users. So that's really ultimately the key thing of it all. So, of course, I'm from AdColony, so of course I'm going to talk about ad monetization, but I'm not just going to talk about that. But it is a key revenue driver for an increasing amount of companies. It's really fun to give this talk here in Helsinki, and I also, in spite of being Swedish, I live here, so this has become my mobile gaming home, if nothing else. And Helsinki is really it's a leading gaming cluster as it is, but when it comes to doing really good video monetization, Helsinki is really far ahead. Most of the studios who are based here are incredibly good at it. I tend to credit Rovio with that, because they have been very good at working with ad monetization from early stages. There's so many people now who are at the different gaming companies around here who at some point in time spent some time with Rovio, so there's an understanding of that. There's also an acceptance of it, which is also why there's no surprise that the first view-to-play company in the world, FuturePlay, pop up here in Helsinki. And would you know it, there's some ex-Rovio dudes in there as well. But that is really becoming one of the things that can have a really strong positive impact on your monetization, increase your lifetime value, and thus allowing you to spend higher CPIs, you can get bigger volumes, and you get into a positive feedback loop. And sometimes there can be a fairly small difference. Right? Paying a CPI of $1 or paying a CPI of $1.20, that doesn't necessarily mean that you get 20% more users. That can mean that you get 500% more users. There isn't really a linear relationship between CPI and volume in many cases. So even small incremental improvements in lifetime value can have a really big impact. Today as well, the video monetization market is really starting to mature. Fill rate really isn't an issue anymore. there's certain countries where fill rate is always going to be an issue, and no one can really solve that. Those countries their economies have to grow. There have to be more money being spent online. There has to be more users with high-end devices, so they become more attractive to brand advertisers. So we're talking about a lot of countries, in particularly Asia-Pacific, but also to some extent in Eastern Europe. Right? You can kind of map it out. Right? If you take gross domestic product per capita, and then you take that, like, there's almost like a one-to-one correlation between how much people spend in games and sort of the value of that market. So value and fill rate isn't really an issue anymore. I also think that mediation is becoming more and more a thing of the past because it really isn't needed. It doesn't really provide that much value to the unique developer. And I'm ultimately coming from the developer side, right? I've spent, in my gaming career, I spent roughly half the time, or let's say 2/3 of the time I spent with gaming companies in the role as CMO, as head of marketing, the person responsible for user monetization, the person responsible for user acquisition. So I've done a lot of this from the other side, and now from the past time I've been here with AdColony, so we can see how things develop in that sense. There are really, really high adoption rates now among users. There's a whole undefined, as of yet undefined, but there's sort of a whole audience of users who virtually exclusively monetize through watching ads. And these players now as well, they have to a large extent come to expect that there should be ads for them in the game. It's become part of their gameplay experience. So sometimes not having ads inside your game can end up hurting you. It's been a really interesting year, I think, for casual puzzle games. I like casual puzzle games. I like them quite a lot. I spend them quite a lot. In the past 12 months, there have been some really, really good ones released. Super polished, high profile, big studios, big production budgets, a year, 2 years in development, super polished. But some of them launched without video monetization. Many, or actually all of the games that launched without video monetization isn't really around anymore. I would say the most notable one is a game called A Little Lost. Did anyone play A Little Lost? Has anyone heard of A Little Lost? A few people, well, okay, the AdColony people have heard about it. You don't count. I mean, it was done by Good Game Studios, right? Based in Germany, 2,000 employees, more money than God, like printing money from their core games, doing incredibly well. One of probably the fastest growing game developer in all of Europe. Like they've grown with like 1,000 people in 2-3 years, gone huge. And they decided to try and go for the casual market. They developed a really, really nice game called A Little Lost. Kind of Candy Crushy meets Best Fiend C type of thing, right? There's very little radical innovation happening in this space, but there's a lot of really good incremental innovation that is happening. But it seems that this is just not enough. Like these games aren't monetizing. High-profile games from high-profile developers are getting killed. And it's going to be really interesting to see. To me, Best Fiends was kind of the last game that really managed to establish itself in the casual market. It looks like maybe Toy Blast from Peak Games is on really good traction right now, so maybe they will be able to do so as well. The final thing, and Jamie from Future Play, he always talks about this, and we all talk about this. I've heard it for 10 years, so I'm really sick of hearing it, but now I'm getting paid to say it, so I have to say it. But it is also the truth, right? RAND dollars, or you can replace that with TV dollars, are coming. I was told in 2009 they're going to come in 2010, and in 2010 I was told they're coming in 2011. And now I'm with AdColony, so since 2014 I've said they're coming in 2015. This year I'm saying they're coming next year, right? They will come. It's just a matter of when and where. But this will have a really big impact on the overall app economy, right? There's a lot of estimates. Global TV spend is roughly in the range of $200 to $250 billion a year, whereas the app economies is somewhere between $40 to $50 billion a year. And when the point happens, when 10% of the TV spend goes into the mobile ecosystem, which will happen because there's just, it's undeniable, it is going to happen, well then you have an influx of $20 billion. Right? The whole market grows by 50%. That's never going to happen through in-app purchases. In-app purchases are maturing. They are not growing at the same level, but generating ad revenue through capturing an audience on mobile devices is going to be really, really big. I really predict that a lot of the bigger game companies are going to set up their own view-to-play departments, start focusing on making these kinds of games, because they have benefits, right? They have size of scale. It is challenging when you start out and you want to make a view-to-play company. You have to build up your audience from scratch. scratch. But if you're Zynga, if you're King, if you're one of these companies with a massive audience, it just makes a lot of sense to start dabbling with this. Metrics are becoming more important. It was a really interesting talk by Scientific Revenues. A lot of it was touched on it, and I'm already running late, so I'm going to try. Oh, okay, that I actually didn't want to do. Go back. See, this is the curse of. How can I go back on this one? This is the curse of having fancy presentations. But it does look good, right? I almost feel bad for doing this on the first day. It's just going to blow everyone else away. But that doesn't matter if it doesn't work. So, moving beyond eCPM, right? Use rate is something we at AdColony have been talking about non-stop for a year and a half right now. And it really measures what percentage of your daily active users that end up watching an ad every day. It's a key metric to keep track of. eCPM, we talk to tons of publishers, right? And one of the things that a lot of publishers have in common is that they just tend to focus way too much on eCPM. eCPM is a really nice metric, and it makes you feel good when it's 24 instead of 18, but it's ultimately useless. Revenue is what matters. Optimize for revenue. eCPM is a very big part of that, but there's a lot of people who say, I can tell everyone, I can offer anyone in this room $100 CPM, no problem. I'll sign the paper right now. I'm not going to guarantee you any inventory, so you're not going to get any traffic, but we can make that deal. And a lot of people tend to kind of stare blind at that. They send deals, and then the ad networks only send them traffic when it actually hits above. So you end up screwing your revenues royally, but you have an eCPM number that you can feel really good about. I touched on mediation. I mean, mediation is to me a necessary evil, or it's an imperfect solution to a industry problem. Like, it makes things maybe slightly better, but not really. The one thing I'll leave everyone who's working with a mediator is, don't use their auto optimization algorithm. If you have to work with a mediator, at least make sure, that gives you tools to be kind of flexible in how you set things up and how you optimize things. So then make use of that. Don't trust their algorithm to make decisions that have a direct impact on your revenue. Waterfall optimization falls very much into this, right? Try new things with your waterfall optimization. What works? Should I have two providers and just alternate every other day they get top position? Should I do other things? Like, there's a lot of things that can be done there that will yield better impact than just sitting back and allowing your mediator to make your decisions for you with their auto optimization algorithm. Has anyone ever worked with a predictive algorithm that actually works? Because I have never seen one. Has anyone done that? Yes? Cool. So you can see into the future. Where did you find a working algorithm like this? Does that?
Created one.
Ah, okay. So you want to sell your own thing? Ah, okay. Never mind. Wait till you're on stage then. One other part, right, is that there are more and more tools coming to help you drive in-app purchases. And I said before, in-app purchases are not going to double, or they're not going to grow too quickly or too fast, but there's still optimizations that can be done. Good examples. I had actually never thought of annuities from the previous one. It's actually really interesting. But doing smarter and better targeting, that's definitely one of the ways of doing it. Looking at your audience, who are watching videos, what impact is that having on their gameplay. Start segmenting your users based on their ad integrations connections. Video for promotion is another tool as well, where you can show a video just as a normal one within the game, but instead of promoting something external that you get paid for, you actually show a video to make an in-app purchase, right? You show off the golden shotgun. Why? Make a 20-second video. Why should I buy this? What does it do? Show it in action and try to get people excited about making more of that. So, in the interest of time, I'm going to skip this, but if anyone wants to talk more about sort of the actual integration, where and when and how to do it in the game, because we have several presentations, we have tons of suggestions around this as well. All I can say is that integration quality matters really much. It can have a big impact on eCPM. It can have a really big impact on user adoption and user experience of it. Ultimately, the goal is the rewarded videos integrated in your game should lead to a positive gameplay experience. The game should be better when they're there, not worse. All right, switching gears, talk a little bit about growth. This is from my colleagues who are on the user acquisition side of AdColony. We run one of the biggest mobile video network. We tend to be the highest ranked sort of independent ad network whenever AppsFlyer, Tune, all of these guys release their statuses. So, and we work with most people in this room, I'm sure. If you're doing user acquisition, you have worked with us. So we have an enormous network, and once or twice per year, we look at all of that data, and we find conclusions, and we love to share these. So these are some things based on the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of millions of ads that run through our network every month. Number one, optimize your campaign creative based on which genre you're doing is. These slides are going to be available, so you don't have to screenshot it or scribble for notes. But we have found by analyzing creatives, analyzing install and conversion rates, these are some of the things that actually has an impact for the different things. It's very clear with action games. Having live action in action games works exceptionally well. It's not just us that have realized this. Machine Zone have realized this. They use Kate Upton, they use Arnold Schwarzenegger, Supercell with Liam Neeson. Like, these things actually work quite well. And then there's a ton of other things there as well. What tends to be the most interesting slide whenever we present is this one. So if you're just going to photo one slide, photo this one. So this is the optimal video length in terms of conversion and install rates. And what's really interesting to see that this year, there's a clear bias towards longer and longer videos. They are performing better than they did past year. We can discuss hours why this is happening. One reason could be that maybe more spend is coming from the mid-core to strategy game players, advertisers, and they really want to have longer videos because it works well for them. If you're a Plarium or you're a Machine Zone, you want to show off a lot of games, tanks, trucks, explosions, like, so you want to have a longer time period of time. So that could be it. Localization of your video ad also actually has really big impacts. I would say out of all these, of course, Korea, Japan, and Russia are three actually quite great markets. Markets that are hard to penetrate as a Western developer. There's a whole track dedicated to that, so go scoop up some info from there. But localizing the video, which is a fairly low amount of work, it actually has a really big impact on install rates. Unless you're French. My final topic, and this is a collection of topics or a collection of different things, but there is a really clear trend that I have noticed since the beginning of the summer, which I'm very, very happy about. Again, having been in this industry for about 10 years right now. I mean, there's a lot of shit out there. There's a lot of, there's some fraud. Fraud defined as independent players doing sneaky shit to maximize their own revenues. And they're getting more and more advanced. We've come across fraudsters who actually work with CPI networks. They make the install, then they actually deposit money. They deposit 99 cents and they make a first purchase, and they still arbitrage out of that because they get paid $3 CPI or whatever. So then they actually go in and they fund that. And most game companies are looking at, you know, what percentage of users are making a first purchase. And all of a sudden you have a source where you have a really high value of that. But there's also issues with ad networks. There are big issues with attribution alignment. Are your different ad sources presenting the users that they are generating for you in the same way? Or is someone using one metric and someone else using another metric? Are you looking at the users you're getting, even from big ad networks? Because I think one thing that's going to happen this year, in the next 12 months, is that a lot of people are going to be surprised what some even relatively big ad networks are doing, which isn't specifically necessarily illegal, but it's sneaky beyond sneaky. That's why I use the word shenanigans, one of my favorite words. So you have to be more alert about this. You have to be much more diligent in your metrics, in your post-install metrics. You should really be doing, especially if you're running substantial campaigns, you really should be looking at stuff like timestamps, like comparing the timestamp between the click and when the install actually happened. And then if you have a 150 megabyte application and you see that there's a 2-second difference there, some shit's up. You should go to your ad networks, and now I'm talking specifically about video because that's what I know the best, but you should really go and ask your ad networks, how do you define a view? Because you'd be surprised at what some ad networks do. They say, yeah, as soon as a video starts showing, that's a view. Maybe some other ad networks say, no, actually a view is when a user has completed watching the thing. So you have to be alert, right? Attribution companies are not going to solve this for you because they are they're not complicit, but they are benefiting from it, right? You pay your attribution company when they can attribute an install. So attributing as many installs as possible are in their interest. So they're not going to do something, which I'm sure they could if they wanted to kind of clean up a lot of this mess, but you can't sit around and wait for them to do it. You guys have to do it, and you have to do it by bringing this up with your ad network, starting conversations with them that are going to be fun for you, but not so fun for them. Ultimately, this is going to have a really positive impact on the industry, because what is happening right now is a lot of companies are spending money for crap. And when you can filter out the crap, you can find what is actually working, you can spend more money there, and you can get better users, and you can build that up. Our friends at Rovio had a great interview in Ad Exchange a couple of weeks ago. They talked a lot about this. We at AdColony, we talked to pretty much everyone in Europe that spends, and we're seeing more and more of these concerns being raised by the publishers, by the advertisers, which is a really good thing. And the one thing I'd like to leave you with right now is light a fire under the ad network's asses. Ask them the hard questions. Don't just sit back and rely on the numbers. Become more advanced in your attribution requirements. Become much more advanced in your post-install metrics, and work on that. And that is my presentation. Thank you.